Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
There's such chaos in our world and so many things that trouble our heart. But Judaism teaches that we have the ability that we have the choice on how we want to respond to life's troubles. And that compassion and love and mercy are the greatest tools we have to build a better and kinder world. But if we want God to be partners with us, we must be the ones who begin that process of building a better world. So please join us in our opening prayer, Olam Chesed Yibaneh.
Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Hai, 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 hai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Hai, 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 hai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Hai, 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 hai. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Hai, 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 hai. I will build this world from love. I did it, I. And you must build this world from love. I did it, I. And if we build this world from love, I did it, I. Then God will build this world from love. I did I. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Die. Olam Chesed Yibaneh. Die.
Building the world from love becomes easier when we know who we're inhabiting this world with. So let's take a few moments to greet each other and introduce ourselves to at least 3 people we didn't know when we came in tonight. Michael Hersher. I know. Michael, you only had to say hi to 3 people. Your knees are rattling as you walk.
Well, they should. They're made of titanium.
So the Sabbath Queen is waiting outside the doors, waiting for us to invite her in. So we continue on page 138 with Lecha Dodi singing
1, 2, 5, 9.
Verses 1, 2, 5, and 9.
Lecha Dodi, likrat kala, Pene Shabbat nikabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, nikabel la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, nikabel la. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat, nikabel la. Shamor v'zechor v'dibur echad, Ishmi'anu el gam yuchad, Adonai echad u'shemo echad, L'shem tiferet v'liti la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Likrat Shabbat lechuven elcha, ki himikor habracha, merosh mikedem nesucha, sof ma'aseh b'machshavat techi la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Hitoreri, ki va'orech, kumi uri, shir daberi. Kavod Adonai ayalik nigla la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Boi v'shalom ateret ba'ala, gam b'simcha ובסהולה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, לה 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 לה. lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela la 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 la. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela. Lecha dodi, likrat kala, b'nei Shabbat nikabela.
One of our great blessings in the congregation are all of the people who step forward to teach in our religious school. It is not easy getting up on Sunday morning and to try to convince a classroom of kids that this is the best place to be on Sunday morning when they want to be out playing soccer or baseball or simply still in bed in their pajamas. And to take on such a task is really truly a gift to the Jewish people and a gift to our congregation. So it's my pleasure to invite up our 4th and 5th grade teachers, Aiden Kern and Sam McCarchick, who come every Sunday morning and bring their joy and their passion for Judaism to the students. The blessing for the candles can be found on page 120, but first we continue with Shalom Aleichem on page 142.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu l'chadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen.
As the Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light.
Amen.
Barchuni l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu. Veitchem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Hamlachim, Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
We rise for the Baruch Hu on page 146.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamevorach Leolam Vaed.
I liked that harmony from the choir section over there. That was beautiful.
Telltale.
We continue together on the top of page 149. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars, creator of the tide of time and light. You guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim.
Who knows how long I've loved you? You know I love you still. Will I wait a lonely lifetime? If you want me to, I will. For if I ever saw you, I didn't catch your name, but it never really mattered. I will always feel the same. Love you forever and forever. Love you with all my heart. Love you whenever we're together. Love you when we're apart. And when at last I find you, your song will fill the air. Sing it loud so I can hear you. Make it easy to be near you. For the things you do endear you to me. Oh, you know I will. La-da-da-da-da. Die, 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 die. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leolam Va'ed.
We continue together with the Ve'ahavta on page 154.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavcha uvchol nafshecha uvchol meodecha vehayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom alevavecha veshinantam levanecha vedibartam bam beshivtecha bevetecha uvlechtecha vaderech uvshochbecha uvkumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha vehayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha leman tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai vihitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiyot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem Amen.
We continue together on the top of page 157. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there, except by joining hands, marching together.
Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osefele, Nora tehilot osefele. Malechutecha ra'u vanecha, okei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam, Ze'eli anu ve'ameru, Adonai imloch le'olam ba'ed. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
We continue together on page 160.
Oh, guide my steps, help me find my way. I need your shelter now. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps. Help me make this day a song of praise to you. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps. Ufros aleinu sukkah shlomecha. Ufros aleinu sukkah shlomecha. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps.
It is my pleasure to invite up all the 4th and 5th graders who are with us tonight to come join us on the bima. Bring your prayer books. Come on up. Don't be shy. We're all doing this together. And it is my pleasure to invite them to help lead us in the Vishamru, which can be found on page 162.
Veshamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריאולה. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריאולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריאולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני, עשה אדון את השמיים ואת הארץ. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריאולם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם בריאולם.
Page 164. We continue praying privately from page 172 through 180, standing or sitting as is your custom.
Yehi Ratson Imrefi Vehegyo Libi Yehi Ratson Imrefi Vehegyo Libi Lefanecha Adonai Turi Adonai Turi Vegoali Adonai Turi Adonai Turi Vegoali. Go inside your heart, just be. Go inside your heart and see what it wants, what it needs, what it yearns when you breathe. Go inside your heart and see. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be kind, be true. May they be acceptable to you, oh my rock and my redeemer. Yehi Ratso Imrefi Yehegyo Libi Yehi Ratso Vehegyo Libi Lefanecha.
For those of you who are in the sanctuary, you'll notice that the Shabbat flyer looks a little bit different than how we've been doing it in the last year. And that's because prior to COVID, one of the things that we would include in the Shabbat flyer was a listing of either members of the congregation or loved ones of members of the congregation who are ill. When COVID hit, we stopped the practice of saying the names of those on the healing list out loud, since we're also live streaming this. And for the sake of privacy, we didn't want to put all those names out there for the world to hear. But for those of you who are worshiping with us in the sanctuary, our Shabbat flyers now contain those names again. And it was actually for a really lovely reason. A member of the congregation emailed us, said they missed seeing the names because then how will they know who to reach out to that week, who's on the healing list, if they don't see the names. So for those of you who call in the names of loved ones for the healing list, we actually have two lists in the congregation now. We have the public list, and then we have the private list. So the private list is, I'm just kind of saying those names in my head, and the public list is the list of the names that are printed. I hope all of that made sense. Did that all make sense?
Yes, Rabbi.
So, thank you, Michael. Sometimes words just come out and I'm not sure if they're understandable. So I hope you do look at the names of those on the list, because when we pray a Misha Berach, it shouldn't just be prayers. It should be prayers that inspire us to act. And so if there are people on this list that you know, or if those are the loved ones of people that you know, please take the time to reach out to them, to give them comfort, or simply be with them, or do as one of my friends does. She makes a giant batch of chicken soup and then freezes them in individual containers. So that way when somebody is ill, she's prepared to just go drop off some soup at someone's house. But whatever you do, please don't ignore the names, because when we're feeling low or feeling ill, that's when we need our community the most. So please join us with a prayer for healing on page 371.
Mishe Berach Avoteinu Mikor HaBracha Le'imoteinu. May the source of strength who bless the one before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mishe Berach Imoteinu Mikor HaBracha Le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shleima, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. Raise your hand if you have ever been to Jerusalem. Ooh, that is quite a lot of people. Raise your hand if you remember that there's a windmill in Jerusalem and you've seen it. So the windmill in Jerusalem is in a neighborhood that was the first neighborhood built outside the walled city of Jerusalem. It was the first neighborhood for thousands of years where people were willing to live outside the wall. And an interesting little tidbit about that neighborhood, Mishkanot Sha'ananim, is that it was built not by the Jews in the land of Israel, but it was built by the Jews of the diaspora. And in particular, one of the Jewish communities that helped pay to build that neighborhood to provide for housing for the Jews to come out of the walled city where living conditions were not great. There was disease, there was poverty, there was filth, and it was time for them to kind of move out of the city and to create a new community. One of those congregations that helped pay for that was our congregation. Now think about this. In the middle of the 1800s, Sacramento is still a frontier town. We are on the edge of the United States, and we get a letter from a guy named Moses Montefiore who was working for the Rothschild family in Israel, and Moses Montefiore's job on behalf of the Rothschild family was to go to the land of Israel and to help the Jews of Palestine. And he wrote letters to the Jewish communities throughout the world asking for financial assistance. And in our archives, we have letters of correspondence with Moses Montefiore as denoting the donation that our congregation was sending to help the Jews of Palestine. Our community, our people exist because of this principle that comes from the Talmud, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh. Every Jew is responsible one for the other. I can guarantee that not a single Jew in Sacramento in the mid-1800s knew any of the people that were living in Jerusalem, but all they needed to be told was your community in the land of Israel, they need your help. And our congregation sent a check. This is how we survive, each of us helping each other. It's how the state of Israel was created. It was created from pennies and nickels and dimes and those little blue pushkis and those little blue tzedakah boxes that a lot of us grew up with, sending nickels and pennies and dimes to help bring about the land of Israel in the modern day. It's what a lot of us were raised to believe. But in recent years, our connection with the land of Israel has been fraying. It is felt too much and too often that that's how we feel about the land of Israel. But we don't always feel that the people of Israel feel the same way about us. When I went on my trip to Israel this last month, I was a little bit nervous. The last election wasn't great. They've also had an excessive amount of elections in the last 3 years. I don't know, 5 elections in 3 years, something crazy like that. And I was nervous. I wasn't sure what things would be like when we got there. It had been 5 years since my last visit, and I was concerned. So let's look a little bit more about this idea of Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh and where it comes from. So its origins are in the Talmud, and it comes as part of a conversation talking about the domino effect of sin. And it concludes with the Aramaic phrase, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh, meaning every Jew is responsible for each other. Now, for many of us, we tend to think of this expression more in terms of helping other communities, like sending money to Moses Montefiore when he needed help, if having a fund in our community, in our congregations, and our federations to help Jews who might need help with food or with housing or different things. But the origins of it coming from the Talmud has to do with the domino effect of sin. What does that mean? A domino effect of sin, and each Jew is responsible one for the other. Did anyone grow up with someone like my grandmother who, when, say, Michael Milken came on the news, went, "Oi, this is bad for the Jews"? So it happens both in the good and the bad. An Academy Award winner is Jewish, and it's like, it's one of ours. See, we look better because the Academy Award or the Nobel Prize or whatever, we're connected to those people. And then it also happens on the other side of, we're related to those people. There's a sense in Judaism that it's not just that we're responsible for one another, but we are connected to each other. So if one person sins and we didn't do anything to stop it, we're also implicated in that act, that we are all responsible for each other's actions. This picture is a picture about communal responsibility. It's a picture that I took when I was on actually my first day in Israel on this trip. It's someplace near the Knesset. It was really hard for me to tell exactly where we were because there was like 100,000 Israelis that were all protesting at the Knesset about judicial reform. Right now in Israel, there are protests that go on every Monday at the Knesset and every Saturday night in Tel Aviv about the reforms that the current government of Israel wants to engage in. And then there have been 2 different days that are called days of disruption, where they're just kind of stopping traffic, stopping business, stopping Bibi Netanyahu's wife from getting her hair colored the way she wants to. So all sorts of disruption. But what do you notice about this picture? What is the most prominent aspect of it? Israeli flags. So those who are protesting have done something that I think is brilliant. They're trying to reclaim Zionism. They're embarrassed by what the current government does in their name and in the name of their government. So when you go to these protests, there are flags everywhere, and they're giving out flags. I went to this protest with my son Ezra, and Ezra goes, I don't even know where to get a flag. He's like, am I missing something? Are we underdressed? We don't have a flag. But they're handing them out because they're telling people, this is our country, that we can't let the government do something in our name. We need to be talking and protesting for democracy in the name of Zionism. So I want to show another picture about this idea of the domino effect of sin. It continues, I'm working on 2 different devices. You could do this one, yeah. If one Jew sees another Jew at the verge of sinning, they have an obligation to step in and help. Simply by virtue of being a Jew, one is responsible for the well-being of other Jews and vice versa. So let's look at this fun little picture. Some of you saw this picture because I sent it out with my article. So this was definitely not a picture I posed for when I was in Israel. This took place not at the Western Wall, but actually away from the Kotel, away from the Western Wall Plaza. I had gone there with several hundred other people to go and pray Rosh Chodesh, the service for the new month, with the women of the wall. It was crazy. It was chaotic. I've prayed with them over the last 30 years a number of times. I've never seen it as bizarre as this, with them trying to keep us from even getting into the Kotel Plaza, with them trying to keep Rabbi Gilad Kariv, who's a member of the Knesset and Reform rabbi, to keep him from getting in because he was holding the Torah that our congregation loaned to the women of the wall. He has ministerial immunity, so he was supposed to be able to go in and with the Torah, but police were trying to keep him out. And when he was finally let in, he had a police kind of escort around him that had a dual purpose of both keeping people from attacking him and keeping him from giving the Torah to the women of the wall. Because even though the Supreme Court in Israel ruled that there's no reason why women cannot pray with the Torah at the wall, the rabbi at the Kotel has deemed it illegal to use any Torahs except for his at the Western Wall. And when we finally got in, we finally prayed. Not the most spiritual service I've ever gone to, unless you really like having a cantor blasting in your head above you with a loudspeaker while you're trying to actually hear your service leader lead. It was a very chaotic thing. We finally were leaving. We were away from the Western Wall Plaza. We were in another part, and that's when we were being chased down by like this group of like little gang of high school girls who were spitting on us and screaming at us and had the whistles, which I know, Eileen, you love those whistles. Eileen Carroll almost got in a skirmish with somebody when we had gone with the women of the wall during a congregational trip we had. She's tough, let me tell you. It took, I think, 5 or 6 of us to hold her back from grabbing one of those whistles. But these girls were trying to create a fight. They were getting in our face and spitting in our hair to try to create a commotion. We were nowhere near the wall. This wasn't just about the wall. This was us about being there at all. And so what happened was I slipped down those stairs, but I want you to look carefully at that picture. And I'm really glad actually that the AP took that photo, because there was things about it, that moment, that I had forgotten until I saw that picture. What do you notice in that picture? What's going on? People are helping. So first you see in the back, that's actually Rabbi Nancy Wexler from the Carmichael congregation. She's trying to help me up. And what do you see in the foreground? And what type of woman does she look like? Does she look like a Reform rabbi? No, this was actually an Orthodox woman. And she's actually trying to, I don't know how to say it, like scold. Yeah, she's scolding the girls and telling them what they are doing is wrong. What she's doing is actually an example of Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh Bazeh, that these girls are creating chaos, laughing at an elder. I could be their grandmother in their world. Not in my world, but in their world I could be a grandmother. And she's trying to help them understand that what they're doing is wrong. Not because she loves us, not because she thinks that Reformed Jews are so fabulous, but because she's actually doing as Judaism teaches us to do. We're not supposed to mock people. We're not supposed to terrorize people. We're not supposed to laugh in the face of somebody else's pain. And that actually gave me comfort, because after that experience, part of the reason I fell was I was like so stunned by the behavior of these girls. It was something that was so foreign to me. And to see another member of the Orthodox community trying to stop it gave me a little bit of hope. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel, taught, intolerance lies at the core of evil. Not the intolerance that results from any threat or danger, but intolerance of another being who dares to exist. Intolerance without cause. It is so deep within us, because every human being secretly desires the entire universe to himself. Our only way out is to learn compassion without cause, to care for each other simply because that other exists. This is something we're lacking in our world today. It's something that we're lacking in the Jewish community today. And it was important actually for me to read this teaching from an ultra-Orthodox Jew, because what really struck me at my core when we were at the wall was, what Torah are they learning from? What Talmud are they studying that feels so separate, so different than the one that I study from? Now, in truth, what a lot of American Jews don't realize is that there are new Torahs, in a sense, in the West Bank, that in a lot of these settlements there are new teachings, new sacred books to many of the settlers that teach hate, that are books that advocate violence, that glorify it. This Purim was the 30th anniversary of the massacre by Baruch Goldstein. I don't know how many of you remember that, but for me, it's going to forever be etched in my mind, because I was living in Israel. I was a student at the Hebrew Union College. Erev Purim was fabulous, bless you. We all performed the mitzvah of not being able to tell the difference between Haman and Mordechai. And the next morning, we were all happily on our way to go to services to hear the Megillah read. And slowly we started to hear the news that in Hebron, one of the holy cities for both Jews and for Muslims, the place that we both attribute to being the burial spot for the patriarchs and matriarchs, for Abraham and Sarah and Isaac, I never do them together, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca, Jacob, and Leah, a place where we had shared times to pray, or not shared, but we shared that space with Muslims and Jews, had different times during the day where they would pray in that spot, then we would pray in that spot, and back and forth, a model of coexistence. Baruch Goldstein, American Jew who had made Aliyah and lived in the territories, opened fire on Muslims while they were bowed down in prayer. it was horrifying. And it led to several years of horrible violence occurring on Purim. He looked at the story of Purim in a very different way than we did. He looked at it and he said, those are the children of Amalek. Those are the people that are supposed to be wiped out. I'm doing a mitzvah by doing this. It was that same mentality that a year later led to the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin. Religious zealots who believed that they were doing God's will. There are two very different Israels right now. There was the Israel that I came face to face with in Jerusalem, and there was the Israel that I got to encounter in Tel Aviv. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis coming out every single week to protest, to push against extremism, to fight for democracy. Both Jews and Muslims who are fighting to create an Israel, or to preserve an Israel that will continue to be democratic. Two very different understandings of what it means to live in the land of Israel. So what is at risk? This quote is from a few years ago, where the former IDF Chief of Staff, Benny Gantz, said, "I truly believe that the security of our future as a people and as a country relies on the strength we possess when we are united." Israel is far from united right now. Only a third of the Israeli population supports the reforms that the current government is proposing to basically gut the judicial system and to try to eliminate any real and meaningful oversight over their government. But that 30% is important because Israel has a parliamentary system, not a democratic, what do we have? Somebody? A republic, thanks. I figured some of you are in government, you gotta know what it is. So they have a different form of government where they depend on coalitions. And the current coalition is very radical and very extreme. In fact, one of the political parties that is part of this coalition until recently was actually banned from running politicians. These are the ideological descendants of Meir Kahane, who was an avowed racist, and a hate monger. And he was deemed, he and his party was deemed to be too racist to be allowed to be in the government. I don't know how that ruling got reversed, but they're now not only part of the government, but they're also in charge of the West Bank. So the people who hate Palestinians the most are the ones who are now in charge of the so-called security of the West Bank. Reuven Rivlin, also known as Ruby Rivlin, who is the immediate past president of the State of Israel, said, "Despite our differences, we are one nation, a Jewish and democratic nation, with responsibilities for each other and the right to demand tolerance from each other." A democratic nation. This is what is at risk in Israel. One of the judicial reforms, the things that it puts at risk, is that if there is no oversight of the Knesset, they can do basically what they want, which would include not calling for new elections. The very fact of a democracy is at risk right now in Israel, that the rights of the majority of the country is actually at risk. The other problem with this is the idea of a Jewish and democratic nation. Under Bibi's multiple governments over more than the last decade, one of the things that they've done in the West Bank with all of the settlements that they've built is they've made it what is essentially impossible to have a two-state solution. I know that there's a lot of us who still hope and dream for such a thing, but if you look at a map of Israel and you look at a map of where all the settlements are, it's not possible to create two separate states. One of the people that we met with when we were there was a Palestinian Muslim from East Jerusalem who talked about that. that a lot of Palestinians have already come to understand that it is not possible to have a two-state solution, and what they want are to be actual full citizens with full rights in the land of Israel, which means that this idea of being both a Jewish and a democratic nation is part of where the tension is right now. It's going to have to be one or the other. It can't necessarily be both. And part of that is because how the population grows in Israel. The two different populations with the highest birth rates are the ultra-Orthodox Jews and the Palestinians. And if Israel is going to continue to rule over the territories, then it's not going to be a Jewish majority. And then the question is it still going to be a democracy? So actually, let's keep it on that for a second, sorry. So I wanted to open it up for discussion. Now that I've bummed out everybody's Shabbat, I'd gotten a lot of responses from people after I sent out my reflections. A lot of people wanting to talk about what's going on in Israel, and a lot of people feeling angry and frustrated because, like me, a lot of you were raised loving the state of Israel, feeling a sense of responsibility for the state of Israel, and feeling years of rejection from particularly this prime minister, who has made it abundantly clear that he doesn't particularly care for American Jews. He feels that he could do better by courting the evangelical Christians, who's also made it clear that he thinks that Reform and conservative Judaism is basically dying out and that we are irrelevant. Yeah, he's lovely. And it makes it hard. It makes it really hard. It also makes it hard because how many of you were raised with the belief that we should never criticize Israel in public? It's how I was. Really, Steve? You didn't get that growing up at Isaiah? Oh, I got that one heavy. That especially as a rabbi, that we're not allowed to air our dirty laundry, that Israel would have to do something so horrific in order for us to criticize them in public. But I want to go back to that idea of Kol Yisrael Aravim Zeh B'Zeh. In discussing the domino effect of sin, every Jew is responsible, one for the other. Israel is engaging in activities that for many of us are unfathomable. When I was there, there was the attack on Harara, the Palestinian town in the northern West Bank, that by members of the Israeli government referred to it as a pogrom. It was a revenge attack because two Israeli brothers had been driving through town. They were murdered in cold blood. And then the settlers so here's Harara, and then all around it it's encircled by settlements. The settlers came out at night, lit the cars on fire, terrorized and attacked the town, and then the minister who's in charge of the security for the West Bank said, basically, we should let Harara burn to the ground. I was very heartened that all the Israelis that I encountered were horrified and shocked and angered that there were people in the Orthodox community that were raising money to help the people who had been victimized, because they were also saying, this is not Judaism, this is not acceptable. And then the minister in charge of security, very namby-pamby, kind of walked his words back, basically saying, oh, I didn't realize that people would take this as orders, to burn it to the ground. This isn't something that we as Jews feel comfortable with. It's something that we have seen ourselves be the victims of too many times. So let me ask you, what do you think we should be doing? Dan.
Practically speaking, what can we do?
Good question. You gotta love Jews that they always answer a question with a question. So let's go forward on this again. Wait, did I give it back to you? Okay. So go to how can we be involved? One more. So there are actually things that we can do. One of the wonderfully surprising things that happened when I was in Israel was that Saturday night protest in Tel Aviv when there were about 250 Reform rabbis from North America there. One of the speakers for that evening was Rabbi Rick Jacobs, the head of the Reform movement in North America. This was actually a huge deal because Israelis, doesn't matter if they're on the left or the right, one thing that they're kind of united on is they don't want to hear what American Jews have to say. That is a long-standing reality, that basically it's been lobby for us, give us, donate for us, but don't have an opinion on what happens here. And Rabbi Jacobs was invited to speak. This was huge. This was the first time that somebody from the diaspora was invited to do something like that. And people welcomed what he had to say. There were people who are happy that there are Jews outside of Israel who are helping them and supporting them. So ways that we can help is actually help the people who are there on the ground. So the Israeli Reform movement is doing important work to fight for democracy, to fight for, I'm doing it on here, I can't do it on that. I can't push the links on that. Can you push the one that says Israel Movement for Reform and Progressive Judaism? Let's see. While it's coming up, the IMPJ does more than simply support Reform congregations in Israel. They work with the Israel Religious Action Center to fight for the rights of all Israelis. And by all Israelis, I mean regardless of religion, regardless of gender, and even for the rights of the Orthodox as well. So the Reform movement there has fought a number of successful battles to the Supreme Court to try to ensure that Israel be a democracy, that it protects women's rights. I don't know if you remember about 20 years ago, the ultra-Orthodox were wanting to put women in the back of the bus. We were we were the ones leading the fight in the Supreme Court to try to make sure that women were not seen as second-class citizens in Israel. So one thing I would do is not only subscribe to the Israel Religious Action Center, they send out weekly emails. I would donate to them. What I did, as soon as I came home, I actually made a donation to the IRAC and to the IMPJ because I felt like these were two places where I knew that my values were put to work in Israel. New Israel Fund is also an excellent place where we can support things and programs that are on the ground, particularly coexistence, fighting for peaceful coexistence between Muslims and Jews and Arabs and Jews. For those of you who don't know, New Israel Fund actually was started in San Francisco, and it was started by, probably about 40 years ago, by San Francisco Jews who wanted their money in Israel to represent their values here. They didn't want their donations going to the territories and to the settlements. They wanted their progressive Jewish values, and mainly Reform Jews, to do something when it got there. And so that was why New Israel Fund was created, to make tangible difference on the ground. The other thing, and I would actually say this is what we have to do first, is we have to educate ourselves. I subscribe to the Times of Israel. I get their emails constantly throughout the day. But the Times of Israel is a neutral paper. It's not peddling a particular perspective on the left and the right. It has opinion pieces that are from across the spectrum. And they actually it's this really cool thing, they actually try to tell the news as opposed to editorializing what's going on. I find it also much more reliable than a lot of American newspapers on the topic of Israel, because we tend to sensationalize things that when it comes to Israel. It's easy to do that. It also gives us more nuances. Ryan, are you able to push any of the, you can't push any of the links in there? Okay, so I'll just have to share with you. So go to the page before. I'd wanted to show you like a day in the life of a newspaper, what you'll read in Israel. It's kind of shocking. No, but I could read it. I could say the headlines. So these are, let's see, some of the headlines today. This is so much fun. Israeli official asked Biden administration why the prime minister hasn't been invited to the White House. That's their big concern. Top official blames weakness of Biden, Bennett, Lapid government for Saudi-Iran deal. So Americans are being blamed that for Iran and the Saudi government of having relations. Oh, this is good. Do you guys know that the chief of police of Tel Aviv was ousted by the top cop in the Israeli government because he was too soft with the protesters in Tel Aviv, because he wasn't using violence. And so the minister in charge of that, Ben-Gvir, ousted him. There was a shooting last night in Tel Aviv. How many of you know about the shooting last night? So in Dizengoff, kind of downtown Tel Aviv, where you'd go on a Thursday night to go have fun, sit in a cafe, hang out with your friends, there were 3 victims of a shooting. A Palestinian terrorist, Hamas has claimed this, shot them up. These aren't things we see in our news. This is also stuff that complicates what's going on with the protests. Whenever there is increased violence from the outside, domestic issues in Israel get pushed down. And so it's very possible with seeing there's been a rise in terror attacks this week, which is no surprise because there was a rise in attacks against Palestinians the week before. When this cycle begins again, Israelis tend to shut down and only focus, understandably, on security. Is older than I am, which, yeah, that's old. That is really shocking when you think that Israel is 75 years old and the occupation is now 55 years old. Yeah, what's your name? I should be coming back so you guys could talk in the mic. Here.
Sorry, my name is Glenn. Okay, sorry, my name is Glenn. I'm your husband. I tend to look things psychologically, and dovetailing with what you were saying, if I could diagnose a lot of us right now, we're enduring a kind of profound disillusionment trauma. This kind of thing leads people to shut down, to not talk, because, well, you're traumatized. But we can't afford to not talk. There's these 2 numbers that keep coming up to me. One was a survey that was done earlier this week that said 1/3 of Israelis think that a civil war is coming. I think that if we're silent, we're choosing a side. And in truth, we need to. The other number that hit me was the number 3. You had mentioned at the cafe, 3 people killed. I was looking at percentages, at the Israeli population number and the American. And it came out that 3 people would be like 111 citizens in this country. Can you imagine what it would be like if we just found out that 111 individuals at a restaurant here in Sacramento were suddenly killed? What it would do, what American foreign policy would suddenly turn to. And these 2 numbers, 1/3 of individuals in a country thinking that civil war is coming, and that 111 people could die in Sacramento. So yeah, I'm feeling very much a lot of disillusionment, and I can't believe that I'm thinking that I wish our son wasn't over there sometimes.
So I think that if we don't want those terror attacks to continue, then we have to be louder and stronger in our support for the people in Israel who are fighting for peace, who are fighting for a democratic, peaceful Israel. People, one of my rabbinical professors taught that you don't have riots in middle-class neighborhoods. You don't have riots in places where people have something to lose. You have riots in places where people feel like they have nothing left to lose. So we have an obligation, if we care for Israel, if we want Israel to exist, if we want it to exist according to the values that we hold dear and the values that we believe in, the values that were promised in the Declaration of Independence in the State of Israel, then I hate to say this, but I agree with my husband. We have to take sides. No one's laughing at that? Okay. Seeing if anyone caught that. But we have to take sides. To be silent right now is to be complicit with a particular point of view. And I don't think we could do that. So I want to close this discussion with a prayer, and I'd like to invite you to go forward. There we go. One more. So I want to invite you to please join in this prayer for democracy with me. And it's by a rabbi Rabbi Oded Mazor, who is a rabbi in Jerusalem. God of our ancestors, Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob, Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah, bless those who stand in defense of democracy, equality, and peace, from among our people and those all over the world who work to repair society in the face of the threat to the justice system and the rule of law. May the Holy One protect them and save them from all trouble and distress, and from every plague and illness, from all harassment and injury, and any attempt to humiliate them and undermine their commitment. In the fight against indifference, inaction, and non-involvement, may their efforts be successful, and may they have a good eye to see wrongs done, a good heart so as not to stand idly by, and the strength to act to protect the rights of all, to do justice and bring peace to every person made in the image of God in the world. May the words of the Torah be fulfilled, for because of this thing God will bless you in all of your efforts and in all of your undertakings. And let us say, Amen. And Patty. To talk more about this and to think about what to do? That is an excellent question. And any members of the Israel Committee in the room? I will have to forward that question to Dan Rabovsky and to Jeff Rabinovitz. There are co-chairs of the Israel Committee. Pass that on to your dad if you talk to him soon. But yeah, Patty, I think that's a great idea. I think it is time for us to come together and start talking about what we can do. It's my pleasure now to invite up Josh Mastronardi, the president of our congregation, for some brief announcements, because I went on 15 minutes longer than I thought I was going to.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom. And as always, thank you for helping us break down and understand the issues. I know in Israel it's especially sometimes difficult to really kind of understand the what's going on and what we can do and how it fits in with the broader issues in the world. Thank you also to Rabbi Stacy and Michael for leading services, and thank you to the 4th and 5th graders for helping lead us tonight. Tonight after services, join us for the Oneg. Tomorrow morning, Torah study 9:30 in the morning. On Sunday, for those who like to get up early, it's your day, because don't forget to change your clocks. We switched to daylight savings time, and there's also a half marathon going on, which is great to have so many things happening in the neighborhood, but it does mean there'll be some road closures. The Chadashot has all the info on street access, so you'll be able to get here, just need to come in from, I think, 11th Street. At 11 a.m., there's a crash course in Judaism. This session is exploring the Pesach Seder. No? It's not this weekend. Oh. Okay, I got that wrong. Check the Hadashot and you'll see when that is. At 7 o'clock Sunday is Achim, the discussion group for men. The topic this month is God, divine, or delusion, and it's going to be a great discussion on how we each define God, led by our Rebbitzin, who, as you know, is married to the rabbi. Coming up on next Sunday, the 19th, the new member morning mixer is at 10:30 in the morning. It's a chance to meet the clergy, staff, each other. It's not just for new members; it's for anybody who'd like to come and join. There'll be snacks, I've heard. There is an RSVP that's needed, so please go do that and sign up for that. The 19th Sunday afternoon, biking with the Brotherhood at 3 in the afternoon at Land Park. On the 21st, Women of B'nai Israel are sponsoring Rosh Hodesh, continuing the series with Rabbi Stacy on, and I just like to say this, Dangerous Women of the Talmud. On the 26th, there's a series on institutional racism starting, and hold the date, Saturday, May 6th, in the evening for Doctor Who. And I figure I've got 2 or 3 more weeks of just teasing that way, or you can just go to the Hadashot and find out all the info. The Jewish Film Festival is still ongoing. The Camp Sholanu Committee is looking for new members, and Camp Nefesh is looking for counselors. And with that, I'll ask any members of the Board of Trustees, past presidents, and committee chairs to stand and introduce yourselves.
My name is Steve Orkand. I'm a past president. And just to remind you that Josh mentioned this event, institutional racism in our public schools. So it's something you're going to want to know about. Keep your eyes open, grab the brochure, and join us.
I'm Sandy Lee, and I'm representing the Women of B'nai Israel Leadership Council to the Board of Trustees.
Nick Zoffel, proud member of the Board of Trustees.
Dale Kassler, past president.
Jason Weiner, Social Action Chair.
Judy Emick Leatherwood, Chair of the Music Committee and Wrangler for the choir. If you're interested in singing in the choir, see me. Bendon Blue, Chief Financial Officer.
Michael Herscher, Chair, Lifelong Learning.
All right, thanks everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
It's my pleasure to invite our 4th and 5th graders up again. And you want to come up quickly, because the faster you come up, the faster you get to go to the Oneg. And to do us the honor of leading us in the Aleinu, which can be found on the bottom half of page 586. Please rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, lateit gedula liyotzer breshit, shel oasanu k'goyei ha'achem, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך בשמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת זו, ושכינת זו, בגובה מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבותה אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Shvitatele.
Our thoughts now turn to loved ones who are no longer with us. And it is with sadness that we recall the recent passing of Betty Rubin, the beloved mother of Rana Malios, Carolyn Rubin Green, Deborah Rubin, and Rabbi Stephen Carr Rubin, beloved mother-in-law of Didi Carr Rubin and Juan Acevedo, and beloved grandmother of Peter, Elizabeth, and Seth Malios, Gretchen, there's a lot, the names aren't all connect. I'm sorry, Gretchen, Natanya, Simeon, Carrie, Leah, and Brady, Heather, Gable, Sarah, Marielle, and Juan and Annette, and beloved great-grandmother of Annabelle, Sam, Benji, Gabby, Michael, Eli, Milo, Max, and Zev, and Marcos, and Mariana, and Jade, and Luna, and beloved sister of Joan Helft, as well as a beloved cousin of Andrea Slade. Zichrona livracha, may her memory forever be a blessing. We also recall loved ones who have passed away at this time in years past. We remember Alan Albert, Deborah Asher, Renee Attia, Ira Bach, Karina Blue, Selma Brainin, Sydney Brescher, Renee Bryant, Arthur Citronbaum, Sabina Cohn, Bernard Copeland, Harry Copeland, Robert Copeland, Rebecca Kroc, Lena Deitel, James Ferguson, Bernard Friedman, David Friedman, Fanny Friedman, Frida Friedman, Jacques Friedman, Olga Friedman, and Rachel Friedman, and Solomon Friedman, Isaac Galen, Bobby Gladstein, Fred Gold, Joan Goldberg, Lena Goldstein, Julian Goodman, Gita Greenberg, Lorraine Grimaldi, Shirley Gross, Helen Hurt, Waltrud Holmes, Paul Joseph, Harry Kaufman, Alice King, Marjorie Kaiser, Dorothy Kubel Landsberg, Daniel Lapidus, Avraham Lazarek, Ruth Lightstone, Amelia Lorenzo, Richard Mafrika, Anna Matisoff, Edith Mayer, Tony Morris, Abraham Moskowitz, Blanche Nathan, Philip Oken, Herbert Orkand, Al Perlman, John Rappold, Robert Roden, Genevieve Sankary, Sarah Schwab, Joseph Singer, Roy Smith, Ruben Struman, Delphina Vasquez, Michael Wacholder, Francis Wasserman, Hyman Weinberg, Michelle Wells, Carolyn Wilstein, and Aaron Wolf. If there are any names that anyone would like to add tonight to the Kaddish list, please feel free to call those names aloud as my gaze meets yours. If you're saying Kaddish for a loved one tonight, I'd like to invite you to please rise. And if the congregation can please join me in these words of comfort. Hamakom yenechem etchem betok sha'ar of Leid Zion v'Yushalayim. May God comfort you among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. We rise as a community to offer comfort to those who grieve as we continue together with the Mourners Kaddish on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirotei be'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'yimru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam umei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitroman v'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, v'yitalev, v'yitalal, shmei dekudisha, b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran be'alma v'yimru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'yimru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mrumav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, V'yimru, Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. So don't have a seat, because our closing song is really a prayer that I know is in the prayer book. Do you have it?
6, 7, 8.
So one of the interesting things about the Israeli national anthem, it's actually a song that was not written in the land of Israel. It was written in Europe. It was written by Jews in the diaspora. It was written not just as a song, but as a prayer. And a prayer that we hope is one that will continue to be realized. Please join us.
Kolod baleva benima Nefesh Yehudi Homiya Ulfatei Mizrach Kadima Ayin Letzion Sophia O lo havda tikvateinu Hatikva bat shnot alpayim V'yotam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim V'yotam chofshi be'artzenu Eretz Zion v'Yerushalayim.
And I'd like to add to that prayer that may all people who live in the land of Israel know freedom and democracy and justice. Amen.
Amen.
Michael, you get the big boy cup.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu ושבת קודשו, באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקרא קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. אמן. לחיים. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat shalom.
Teavon.